With supports being nerfed, a lot has changed for the hierarchy of damage heroes. More dive options are available, and on top of that, a lot of new compositions besides just the generally boring Orisa, Baptiste, Iliari have been played for a while now. And with the Roadhog rework along with more balance changes coming around the corner, the state of the game is looking pretty upward. If you're looking to get better at the top damage heroes right now, or even master your favorites, use the link in the description for a GameLeap membership. There are tons of guides from different coaches and experts that cover positioning, ultimate usage, and the best way to solo carry for your hero on top of the general map guides and fundamentals. Check it out, and let's get right into the tier list. Finally, Reaper is not at the very bottom, with Pharah being definitely the worst. Iliari has gotten nerfed, which would seem like it would make Pharah better, but because Pharah's hitbox is so big, she's likely to still be hit by every shot Iliari takes. Even with her primary fire size reduced, it's still very easy to hit a floating Pharah, so nothing has really changed for Pharah's effectiveness. Even Team Saudi Arabia in the World Cup, the country with literally the most Pharah players, isn't opting to play her. Baptiste and Iliari are both still very strong despite their nerfs, and even D.Va has received buffs, and although the two buffs don't impact her matchup with Pharah specifically, she's a much more viable pick for running down the rest of the Pharah's team to switch things up, since tunnel envisioning the Pharah could lead to the rest of her team getting value. Although Pharah hasn't received any changes in this patch, she's likely to receive a small rework similar to Zenyatta's at the same time as the big Roadhog rework in the later half of the season, that will make her hopefully less reliable on Mercy to get even a shred of value. Moving on, for all the Reaper fans, well, he's not in the last place, so that's a plus. Reaper is still an F tier, but with faster compositions being played, he can at least rush people down with them. He just lacks utility and even sustainability. Mei is pretty similar to Reaper, but she's way better at staying in the fight compared to Reaper. It's mostly due to Reaper's Shadow Step being useless most of the time, only being really useful before or after the fight. You can still use it to reposition in the middle of the fight, but it's definitely really clunky and usually very obvious. It can at least bait people to look at you, giving your team a chance to push aggressively. He's still a really rough hero to play, but it's looking a little bit better for him, although it's worrying that we haven't heard anything about buffs or changes to make him more effective, but not a broken must pick. Moving up to D tier, Junkrat is still not doing too hot, but he's at least not F tier. Junkrat can do a lot with high skill and flexible playstyle, but it's just way too difficult to play him not only against the best tanks right now, but also on most maps. Open space and high grounds make him really difficult to play, and often you just can't avoid it. Even though it's pretty unreasonable to assume he'll be great on all maps and into all scenarios, he really has so many weaknesses that just like Pharah and Reaper, it's super difficult to make him work well. Switching things up like playing the flank, or hard focusing the tank, or even going for dives by jumping above the enemy and raining down grenades looking for a one-shot combo are the best ways to make him work, so don't get too stuck on just spamming main if you're hoping to try him out. On to C tier. For a pretty niche hero, Widowmaker keeps herself at a good spot, helped out quite a bit by her new buffs. Her changes were made intentionally to help deal with Sombra and other dives, and although they're small, it's definitely good for her to have a stronger SMG that won't be melting people down on its own, but still ideal for protecting yourself without having to hit the nastiest shot of your life to stay alive. Her ultimate isn't very fun to play against, and often means you'll have to sit and wait for it to end. And now that she has it more often, she's undeniably going to be helping her team out more, which isn't really what she's been all about as a solo angle headshot hero. But even though she's gotten better, she's still very counterable and is also limited to few maps, where she has long sightlines and multiple angles to approach from. And as more compositions become more brawly and fast, Widowmaker just can't keep up, and is sometimes just completely unplayable. Next up is Cassidy, who despite being a pretty balanced hero, just can't find a place where he's a better option than anyone else. When it comes to spam, he gets beaten out both in range and raw damage output. When it comes to rush, he's simply too slow and doesn't offer any gap closing utility like Symmetra and Mei, or even once again the crazy damage output of heroes like Bastion. And in dive comps, well, ironically he has been played in some dive comps before, synergizing well with Ana and Lucio, but right now he gets chewed up by how hard the engages can be. He definitely can't be written off as a totally terrible hero, although considering he's received a nerf despite not being close to a strong pick makes it feel pretty bad to play him. Finishing up C tier is Sombra, and though her rework has made her more lethal, she definitely struggles to consistently pressure backline on her own, and is actually better played as a counter to heroes like Doomfist, Wrecking Ball, and even Genji, where you focus brutally on trolling them as much as you can to prevent them from playing aggressively. But with the supports being nerfed and abilities like Immortality Field, Biotic Nade, and Protection Suzu being available less often, there are some chances to go for the kill, but most supports are still fully capable of handling themselves against Sombra alone, as long as they have their abilities ready and haven't had them forced out. Her EMP charge rate has also been buffed, but it's still a slow charging ultimate for a pretty mediocre effect, and it cannot be overstated how hard you have to work to get just one pick with it unless you hit every member of the enemy team, including both supports. She's definitely super annoying to play into as a tank, since her virus is really easy to hit on big hitboxes, but even so there are a lot of ways to deal with her and then chase her down to punish her aggression. She definitely has a long way to go to be overpowered in a team setting, but at least she's still a strong duelist even if there are better options. Starting off B tier is Torbjorn, who's still reeling from the initial Season 7 patch notes nerfing his fire rate and overload, and as the meta pulls away from spam he's definitely losing his touch. He's still got a good kit and is a great anti-dive option, but with more dive compositions including heroes like Echo and Sojourn who can easily destroy the turret and also beat him in a duel 9 times out of 10, he's not doing so hot even in his element. He can still pack quite a punch with his overload damage that that needs to be respected, and he's actually lucky to not have received a cooldown nerf like Bastion and Cassidy have. Overload is a pretty similar cooldown when you consider that Blizzard wanted to increase the vulnerability windows heroes have, so it's easier to capitalize on ability usage. If you also consider that he is just not very good into the top tanks right now, like Sigma and even Doomfist, who can build his power punch on Torb's turret and hit him for maximum shotgun damage on his chunky hitbox, he's lost a lot of the advantages that used to make him favorable to play. Following up with a more positive note is Mei, who despite receiving a nerf and not having very good playtime until now, is still getting some good love, with more compositions and styles being tested out that she does great into. And unlike Torbjorn, she's got a great matchup into both Sigma and Doomfist, and with Bastion, Baptiste, and Iliari receiving nerfs, she's not facing them all the time, and her Ice Wall is sticking around for a lot longer. She's gotten a lot better, mostly relatively to other compositions, but in ranked specifically, she's not reaping all the benefits of coordinated play that make her really effective when you're trying hard with your team. Playing tempo right with Mei is super important, and if you get out of sync with what your team is doing, it's a night and day difference between a won fight and a lost fight. She's doing well, especially compared to the start of the season, but remains a tough pick that still struggles to get her Blizzard off against the still powerful supports who have more than enough abilities to save everyone caught and then some. Hanzo is next in the pretty jam-packed B tier, and he's one of the more unique heroes mostly due to how he's undoubtedly a strong hero, yet doesn't quite have the right strengths to be a powerhouse. His spam, mobility, and even utility through his Sonic Arrow and Dragon Strike zoning are all good, but just not great. He fits well into poke-based composition, so he's got no problems whatsoever, but he's really vulnerable to dives and just rush engages, only having his limited jump that's best used for duels or quick repositioning. Does not even come close to helping him survive a 5-man dive like some other heroes can, so not only do you have to hit your headshots every once in a while to be worth more than similar spam heroes, but your positioning has to be on point to not get caught off guard. But being basically right in the middle of the tier list, he's certainly strong. There just happens to be some way bigger fish that can do a lot more heavy lifting than he can. On to Symmetra, who's fallen quite a bit without the extra 25 HP. It's pretty crazy how such a small increment can make such a big difference, but it really affects a lot of aspects of her gameplay. Clutching in the late fight, escaping with her teleporter, playing aggressively close with her tank, all of these plays are affected by how much health she has, meaning with less, it's much harder to pull them off. And the health she's lost is shield health as well, which is unbelievably strong for keeping herself alive on her own without having to rely on her supports. Although the reason for this nerf is to balance her out, since she doesn't have to only play close range anymore with her improved secondary fire, it will definitely make her less able to play at close range, rather than just encourage her to switch between her playstyles. You still have all the aggressive potential, but everyone who knows about the nerf and sees a 200 HP hero with a big hitbox in the front line will definitely look to capitalize. Almost at the end of B tier, Soldier 76 remains a classic pick that doesn't break the game, but does his job, and by god does he do it well. As the more successful shooting guy compared to Cassidy, he may not have utility or even crazy mobility, but he has just enough in his kit to allow him to switch between angles and lay down solid focus fire and burst damage, which is one of the best possible things a damage hero can do. Being able to take angles and threaten them with a pick instantly isn't possible for all DPS. Some of them are forced to engage to get picks, or sit back and spam, or slowly take space looking to set up on their favorite sightline. But Soldier gets where he wants to go, and quickly. Soldier has also had a pretty good life cycle so far in Overwatch 2, even being part of the best meta comps sometimes, and has even had good playtime in the World Cup to carry hard on maps like Busan that have tons of angles and a lot of space to cover. I've gassed him up quite a bit, yet he still stays in B tier. He's still not ideal in the newer and faster compositions where you can't get away with just shooting hard. Finally, at the top of B tier, Echo is top of the class, and though she's not hitting crazy strides as a result of the support nerfs, she's got a good gig going, being a great pick for taking out heroes like Sigma and even has a better matchup with Iliari herself, now able to two-shot her pylon. Although she's a flying hero with the inevitable weakness of being limited by the map she's on, she makes up for it more than other similar niche heroes through her unmatched burst damage. Echo may be consistent, but if she can't fully engage, she's just feeding support ultimates with her poke damage, and with the peel and damage mitigation in the game still at a pretty big all-time high, combined with how telegraphed her engages usually are, you can't always find picks against certain team compositions. Now for A tier, and fittingly, Ashe is our first hero, sneaking up from being the solid all-rounder to being a pretty optimal pick to beat out some of the newer meta mainstays. Both Bob and her Dynamite are way better when used against brawl compositions, and especially Lucio can be easily punished through precise ability usage. Although there are still a lot of great heroes with headshot potential that can take Bob down in an instant, they're less common, helping Bob stay in the fight for a lot longer. Ashe's damage output is still a little bit crazy, so expect to see a lot more from her as players start to get how good she still is, not only into brawl compositions but dive as well. Even though she's not considered an anti-dive hero, her Coach Gun and Dynamite are perfect for surviving and punishing any single hero trying to engage you, and with just a little help, handling 2 or more won't be too difficult. Moving on to Tracer, and though you'll still have to focus a lot of structures, the recent nerfs have made them a lot weaker. You'll be surprised by how quickly they die with just a small health decrease, because every bullet you don't have to shoot into an inanimate object can go right into an actual enemy player, bringing you closer to the melee finisher to take out your target in a flash. She's still got some natural enemies and is pretty suboptimal into a lot of Jungle Queen and Kiriko compositions, so she's still not quite good enough to be played consistently all the time without fail. On the bright side, Torbjorn and Cassidy aren't doing too well, and even just the addition of push and flashpoint to the game has made her feel great when combined with a faster paced playstyle. It's definitely a good sign that she feels strong, and with the support nerfs she can reap the benefits of more solo kills just like other dive heroes. And speaking of other dive heroes, Genji is next. Just like Tracer, he's having a great time against some of the weaker supports, and especially the nerfed Pylon and Immortality field. Genji is probably the most inconsistent of the top heroes, but his flexibility and composition compositions makes up for it. His mobility and damage give him so many options on fighting duels, pressuring space, and even going for burst kills with a solo dive if presented the opportunity. Make sure to avoid playing too passively, since if you don't limit test and play aggressively as often as you can in fear that you might explode, you'll miss out on the insane snowballing potential that he has, which is pretty unrivaled thanks to his dash resets. It's a little bit too good to be true that he's staying viable, but for now it's best to just be thankful that a precise hero like Genji, who's rewarded for smart staging and engaging, is playable, and on top of that, a very good pick into most compositions. Rounding out A tier is finally Bastion, who finally can't hold on to the very top spot for longer, and not even S tier either. He's still the ideal pick and amazing at helping rush compositions push hard, but because he's been meta for so long and received nerfs at the same time, more strategies to beat him are emerging, the most prominent being hybrid spam and dive compositions, with Doomfist especially being great at punishing not only Bastion, but the team he's playing with as well. He's still a top-notch hero, but his nerf is actually twofold, making him vulnerable for longer and also reducing his damage dealing uptime, not able to cycle his forms as often when the option is available. Even with these nerfs, he's great, so for now this is an ideal outcome, but as the winds change and more compositions are played, he'll become less played, just like he was before his initial grenade and recon form buffs that suddenly propelled him into must-pick territory. Finally, for the lone hero in S tier, and well deserved at that, Sojourn reigns, and it's pretty fitting as she's the only new DPS hero added to Overwatch 2 since its release. She has everything that a primary damage dealer needs: effective spam, pick potential, and mobility that is perfect for escaping any danger or engaging instantly. Having the vertical movement to access high grounds is also insanely underrated, and it's what puts her firmly above heroes like Soldier and even Ashe, who's got a longer cooldown, slower movement, and is even locked out of shooting during her coach gun, unlike Sojourn, who can use all of her abilities while power sliding. The skill ceiling for Sojourn is also perfectly high up, with as close to one-shot capability as you can without literally dealing 200 exact damage with one hit. She's a great hero, and it's honestly getting a bit tiring mentioning her so often when talking about top damage heroes, but Bastion is definitely a lot worse when it comes to how fun the game becomes when either of them is in the lobby. If you're looking to get better at the top damage heroes right now, or even master your favorites, use the link in the description for a GameLeap membership. There are tons of guides from different coaches and experts that cover positioning, ultimate usage, and the best way to solo carry for your hero on top of the general map guides and fundamentals. Check it out, and let's get right into the tier list. That's it for the mid-season 7 DPS tier list. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.